The glow of downtown Austin's lights stretched endlessly before Ryan Thorne, casting their reflections against the towering, floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. Yet the view that once symbolized success now felt suffocating. Ryan, a self-made tech billionaire and founder of Skyfleet, a revolutionary rideshare platform, stood in the silence of his extravagant living room. The perfectly tailored suit he wore, the subtle gleam of his vintage Rolex, and even the artistic masterpieces on his walls mocked him. He had everything money could buy, everything except what he craved most: authenticity. He paced the cold marble floor, his restless thoughts interrupted by the buzz of his phone. A text lit up the screen, sent by his childhood best friend, Ethan Cole. "Ethan, dinner tonight? Or are you still gazing at the city like a brooding billionaire cliché?" Ryan smirked at the accuracy of Ethan's humor. He typed a quick reply: "Rooting's all I've got left." Moments later, his phone buzzed again. "Ethan, that's it. I'm coming over. Don't move." Ryan didn't bother replying. Ethan's knack for showing up at the right time was both an annoyance and a comfort. True to his word, Ethan arrived 15 minutes later, a paper bag of greasy burgers and fries in hand. "You need real food, not whatever kale creation your chef cooks," Ethan declared, plopping the bag onto the pristine counter. Ryan chuckled, sliding onto a stool. "What's the therapy session about this time?" Ethan leaned against the counter, watching him closely. "What's going on? You look like someone repossessed your yacht." Ryan sighed, taking a bite of the burger. "I'm tired, Ethan. Every woman I meet, it's the same. They see the money, the headlines, not me." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Well, no kidding. You're a walking trust fund in a suit. It's part of the package." "That's exactly the problem," Ryan said, frustrated. "I want someone who sees past it, who sees me." Ethan leaned back, his expression softening. "You're serious?" Ryan nodded, his voice low. "How do I even find that? Everyone already knows who I am." For a moment, Ethan was silent, then a grin spread across his face. "You hide in plain sight." Ryan frowned. "What?" "You own Skyfleet, be a driver, strip away the billionaire nonsense and just be Ryan." The absurdity of the idea made Ryan laugh. "You can't be serious." "I am," Ethan said, his grin unwavering. "You're not exactly hard in the eyes." Ryan rolled his eyes. "And you can be charming when you're not sulking. See what happens when people don't know your net worth." Ryan's laughter faded as the idea rooted itself in his mind. It was crazy, but maybe crazy was what he needed. A week later, Ryan Thorne stood in the driveway of a modest duplex he had rented in the suburbs. Gone were the designer suits. Now he wore a plain t-shirt and jeans. The sleek sports cars of his garage were replaced by a second-hand sedan with a scratch bumper and a lingering smell of stale coffee. He barely recognized himself in the reflection of the car window. Disheveled hair, no Rolex, just Ryan. Ethan arrived to see him off, his smirk unrelenting. "You look like an extra in a low-budget indie film." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Ryan muttered. "This isn't about you," Ethan said, leaning against the car. "It's about the people you meet. Stay curious, don't give up if the first few rides are duds." Ryan nodded, gripping the steering wheel as Ethan stepped back. "Here goes nothing." The first day was uneventful. Ryan drove office workers, college students, and tourists, all too distracted to notice their driver. It wasn't until the second day that his experiment took an unexpected turn. She stepped into his car like she owned the world. Vivienne Cross. Her perfume, her designer blazer, her perfectly calculated demeanor, it all screamed wealth and control. Vivienne barely glanced at him as she settled into the back seat. "Busy day?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone casual. She met his eyes in the rearview mirror, a faint, enigmatic smile on her lips. "Always." "And you?" "Lots of people, needing rides." Vivienne studied him, her gaze sharp. "You have an interesting voice. It doesn't match your car." Ryan chuckled. "What's that supposed to mean?" What it means, you seem out of place, like you belong somewhere else. Her tone was light, almost flirtatious, but it unsettled him. Vivienne was observant, and that made her dangerous. Later that evening, Ryan picked up another passenger. Unlike Vivienne, she was unassuming, a young woman with kind eyes and a quiet strength. Her name was Callie Harper. She worked at a library and was studying to become a teacher while raising her son Noah. "Long day?" Ryan asked as she buckled in. She nodded, smiling softly. "Always. But it's worth it." Her warmth and sincerity were a stark contrast to Vivienne's polished exterior. By the time Callie stepped out, leaving him with a crumpled $5 bill and a genuine thank you, Ryan felt something he hadn't in years: hope. The next few days brought more rides, more faces. Yet Ryan couldn't stop thinking about Callie. Her laugh, her stories about Noah. It all felt real in a way nothing else did. One afternoon, as he drove through downtown, he spotted her again, standing outside a library with a tote bag of books. She waved when she saw him. "Ryan, right?" she said, sliding into the passenger seat. "Fancy running into you again." "Small world," he replied, smiling. Their conversation flowed easily, and for the first time, Ryan allowed himself to relax. But just as he was beginning to feel a connection, Vivienne returned, her presence as commanding as ever. "You're not just a driver, are you?" she said during one of her rides, her eyes probing. "There's more to you than meets the eye." Ryan deflected, keeping his answers vague. But Vivienne was relentless, her curiosity bordering on obsession. She wasn't just interested, she was determined to uncover his secret. The duality of Ryan's new life became increasingly precarious. On one hand, he found solace in Callie and Noah's unguarded warmth. On the other, Vivienne's sharp interest threatened to unravel everything. And then there was the growing guilt of waking up knowing that part of his life was indeed over. And then there was the growing guilt. How long could he keep lying to Callie? One evening, after playing soccer with Noah and sharing dinner with Callie, Ryan felt something shift. This wasn't just an experiment anymore. He was falling for them, for the life they represented, for the man they made him want to be. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and Ryan Thorne's world was about to come crashing down. Ryan's newfound routine began to settle into something resembling normalcy, but the contradictions of his double life loomed larger each day. By day, he was the anonymous rideshare driver, blending into the fabric of Austin's diverse population. By night, he was a billionaire with a penthouse view, grappling with the weight of his secret and the complicated dynamics forming around him. One crisp fall evening, Ryan received a notification for a new passenger. He recognized the pickup address instantly: Callie's library. A wave of anticipation, mixed with a pang of guilt, washed over him as he pulled up to the curb. Callie stepped out, her hair slightly tousled and her tote bag overflowing with books. She smiled warmly as she climbed into the car. "Third time's the charm," she joked. "You must be my unofficial chauffeur." Ryan chuckled, feeling an ease he hadn't felt in years. "Maybe fate just likes to play matchmaker." Callie raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "Is that so? Or maybe you're stalking me?" "Caught me," Ryan teased. "Can't resist chauffeuring book lovers." Their banter flowed effortlessly as they drove through the city. Callie's stories about her students and her son Noah painted a picture of a life full of challenges, but also profound joy. Ryan found himself craving more of her warmth, her laughter, her authenticity. But as they neared her modest apartment complex, Ryan's heart sank. He was living a lie, and every moment he spent with Callie made the truth harder to reveal. "Thanks for the ride, Ryan," she said, stepping out of the car. "Maybe next time I'll let you borrow one of these books." "I'll hold you to that," he replied, forcing a smile. As she walked toward her apartment, Ryan stayed parked, his mind racing. Could he really continue this charade? Or was he setting himself up for heartbreak, and worse, hurting someone he was starting to care about deeply? The next day, Ryan's internal conflict was interrupted by an unexpected call. Vivienne Cross's name flashed on his phone screen. He hadn't given her his number, but somehow he wasn't surprised. "Ryan?" she said smoothly when he answered. "I've got a proposition for you." "I'm listening," he replied, though his tone was wary. "There's a gala tomorrow evening at the Art Institute. I need a date, someone who doesn't bore me to tears." Ryan hesitated. Vivienne was bold, intelligent, and dangerously perceptive. Spending more time with her felt like walking a tightrope, but refusing might raise more questions. "Sure," he said finally. "What time?" "7 sharp, don't be late," she said before hanging up. Following evening, Ryan arrived at the gala, his old life temporarily reclaiming him. He donned a sleek black suit, his appearance once again that of the billionaire everyone knew. Vivienne greeted him at the entrance, her gown shimmering under the grand chandeliers. "You clean up nicely," she said, her eyes scanning him with an approving glint. "You don't look too bad yourself," Ryan replied, offering a polite smile. As the evening progressed, Vivienne's sharp wit and magnetic presence drew him in, but her probing questions kept him on edge. "So, Ryan," she said during a quiet moment on the balcony, her gaze fixed on the city lights. "What's your story? The real one?" Ryan's heart raced. "I'm just a guy trying to figure things out." Vivienne smirked, clearly unconvinced. "You're a mystery, Ryan Thorne. And I love unraveling mysteries." The duality of Ryan's life grew more strained with each passing day. His time with Callie and Noah became a refuge, but Vivienne's relentless curiosity loomed like a storm cloud. One evening, after dropping Callie off, Ryan found himself parked outside a coffee shop, lost in thought. He pulled out his phone and called Ethan. "This is getting out of hand," Ryan admitted when Ethan answered. "Vivienne's on to me, and I can't keep lying to Callie." "Then don't," Ethan said simply. "Be honest. If she's the kind of person you think she is, she'll understand." "And if she doesn't?" Ryan asked, his voice heavy with doubt. "Then at least you'll know where you stand, but Ryan, if you keep this up, you're gonna lose her either way." Ethan's words lingered as Ryan ended the call. He knew his friend was right, but the thought of revealing his true identity terrified him. A week later, Ryan received a late-night request for a ride. The pickup location was a high-end hotel downtown. When he arrived, Vivienne was waiting, her expression unreadable. "I need to talk to you," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. Ryan drove in silence as Vivienne studied him. Finally, she spoke. "You're not who you say you are," she said bluntly. "I did some digging." Ryan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "And what did you find?" "Enough to know you're not just some random driver," she replied, "but I want to hear it from you." Ryan pulled over to the side of the road, his heart pounding. He had been careful, but Vivienne's determination had outmatched his precautions. "Fine," he said, meeting her gaze. "I'm Ryan Thorne, founder of Skyfleet." Vivienne's lips curled into a triumphant smile. "I knew it. But why the charade?" Ryan hesitated before answering. "I wanted to see what life was like without the money and the fame. To meet people who saw me for me." Vivienne's expression softened, a rare vulnerability flickering in her eyes. "You're braver than I thought." With Vivienne's discovery, the precarious balance of Ryan's life tipped. She promised to keep his secret, but her newfound knowledge added an unpredictable element to their interactions. Meanwhile, Ryan's bond with Callie deepened, but so did his guilt. One evening, while playing soccer with Noah at the park, Ryan made a decision. He couldn't keep living a lie. As Callie watched from a nearby bench, her smile radiant, Ryan realized he had to tell her the truth. "No matter the risk, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice steady, but his heart racing. Callie tilted her head, her expression curious. "What is it?" Ryan took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly. "I haven't been completely honest with you. I'm not just a rideshare driver. I'm Ryan Thorne, the founder of Skyfleet." For a moment, Callie was silent, then she let out a soft laugh. "That's a good one. Are you serious?" "I am," Ryan said, his tone earnest. "I rented the duplex, bought the car, and took the job to escape my life as a billionaire. I wanted to see what it was like to just be normal." Callie's laughter faded as the weight of his words sank in. "You lied to me," she said, her voice trembling. "All this time, you pretended to be someone you're not." "I didn't mean to hurt you," Ryan said, his eyes pleading. "I just wanted something real, and with you, it felt real." Callie stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "You should go." Ryan hesitated, his heart breaking. "Callie, please." "Go," she repeated, her voice firm. As Ryan left her apartment, the door closing behind him, he felt the full weight of his choices. He had set out to find authenticity, but in the process, he had lost the one thing that felt truly real. Ryan stood outside Callie's apartment, the harsh silence of the night wrapping around him. The door that had closed behind him felt like a physical weight pressing against his chest. He had expected a reaction, but not like this. He had thought he could navigate the labyrinth of his own secrets, but in the end, it had all crumbled. With a heavy sigh, he leaned against the cool metal railing of the stairwell, his mind racing. His heart ached for Callie, for her trust, which he had shattered in one careless moment. She had welcomed him into her life, into her world, one so different from his, and he had violated it with lies. Now, he didn't know if there was a way back. He stared up at the dim streetlights flickering in the distance, the buzzing sound of a passing car making him feel more isolated than ever. Ethan's voice echoed in his mind. "If you keep this up, you're going to lose her either way." It had been true, and now it was too late. What if he never saw her again? What if, in telling the truth, he had lost her for good? Ryan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. His usual solutions, money, influence, power, were useless here. Nothing could buy Callie's forgiveness, and even if it could, what kind of person would he be then? He couldn't force her to trust him again. If she ever came back to him, it had to be because she wanted to. The next morning, Ryan woke up late, the ache of last night still lingering in the pit of his stomach. He had barely slept, restless in his thoughts, replaying every word and every moment. He reached for his phone, but there were no new messages from Callie. Not that he had expected any. He had ruined it all with his lies. Instead, his eyes lingered on a message from Vivienne, sent late the previous night. "We need to talk. You've made a mess of things, and I'm not sure if you realize just how deep this goes." Ryan exhaled sharply. The last thing he needed was to get tangled up with Vivienne again. He was already drowning in his own mess. But she had been right in some ways. He had been reckless. And now it was more than just about him. The whole situation was spiraling, and if he didn't gain some control over it, there was no telling what would happen. He dialed Vivienne's number, his thumb hovering over the screen for a second longer than necessary before hitting send. The line clicked, and her voice greeted him with a certain ice-cold precision. "I figured you'd call," Vivienne said, her tone smooth as always. "How's life as a driver treating you?" Ryan rubbed his temples. "We need to talk. You know about Callie, and I didn't mean for things to get out of hand." "You think?" she replied, the sarcasm evident in her voice. "You've been lying to her, to everyone, and yet you still expect a happy ending." "I didn't want to lie," Ryan said, frustration building. "I wanted something real, Vivienne. I wanted, I don't know, to just be Ryan for once, to meet people without the weight of my name and money hanging over them." "Does it really work that way?" Vivienne asked, her voice lowering, almost thoughtful. "Did you think you could just turn it off? You think your money, your name, don't define you?" I know it's complicated," Ryan admitted, his voice dropping as well. "But I can't keep pretending." "And you think Callie will forgive you? You think you can walk back from this?" Vivienne's voice had sharpened again. "You've made your bed, Ryan. Don't come crying to me when it all falls apart." "If you don't, I'm convinced I'll drop out," he said. Ryan's chest tightened. He wasn't crying, but it felt like everything was falling apart. What do you want from me, Vivienne?" "I want you to stop running from who you are," she said, her tone almost gentle now. "You can't keep hiding. Not from yourself, not from Callie, and definitely not from me. Ryan's mind swirled. What's that supposed to mean? You know exactly what I mean, she replied. You want Callie? Fine. But don't drag me into your mess. We both know what's at stake. But first, get your act together. She hung up before he could respond, leaving him standing alone in his thoughts. There was no clarity, no solution in her words, only more confusion. She was right in a way. He had been hiding, running from what he had built. But could he really just turn everything off? Step out of the shadows of his own empire? Stop, he thought. He reached for his phone and called his brother. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ryan ran through the motions. His assistant called with updates on Skyfleet's latest numbers. Meetings with executives droned on, and yet his mind was elsewhere. It was consumed with the image of Callie's face when he had told her the truth. Her disappointment. Her hurt. At lunch, he found himself scrolling through her social media profile absent-mindedly, catching glimpses of her life, pictures of Noah, of quiet moments at home, of books stacked on her kitchen counter. There was nothing flashy, nothing that screamed for attention, and yet everything she posted seemed imbued with a sense of purpose, with depth. And all he had was a name, a mask. Cecilia leaned back in her chair, looking out over the water and thinking back to how easy it was, even before the pandemic. And for the first time, Ryan set his phone down and leaned back in his office chair. The weight of his fortune seemed heavier than ever. He had it all: luxury, influence, power. But none of it mattered. It was the life he didn't have, the life he had caught a glimpse of through Callie's world, that he craved. Later that evening, Ryan sat in his penthouse, the city lights twinkling below him like a distant reminder of his success. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Ethan. You can't keep avoiding it. Go talk to her. I'm not going to tell you twice. Ryan clenched his fists, his frustration bubbling over. Ethan had been pushing him for days now, urging him to confront the mess he had created. But how could he? What could he possibly say that would make a difference? He stood and paced the room, trying to summon the courage. It was a simple thing, talking to her. But everything felt like it was on the line now. What if she hated him forever? What if, after everything, she couldn't see past his lies? He grabbed his jacket, threw on his shoes, and left the penthouse. The elevator ride down seemed endless, each floor an excruciating reminder of how far he had to fall. The drive to Callie's apartment felt like 100 miles, even though it was only a few blocks away. He parked in the same spot as before, the familiar streetlights flickering in the same rhythm, yet nothing felt familiar anymore. He walked up the steps to her apartment. The door was ajar, and for a second, his heart skipped. Was she waiting for him? But as he knocked softly, he realized that wasn't it. She had been expecting him once, trusting him, but now? Callie opened the door, her expression guarded. Ryan, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you, he said, his voice hoarse. I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. But I can't keep living with this lie. I can't live with it for much longer. It's just that the truth, it's scary at times. I won't leave you alone here, he said. Callie stepped aside, gesturing for him to come in. You lied to me, Ryan, about everything. Who are you, really? Ryan stood there for a moment, his breath caught in his chest. But this was it. He had to say it. He had to show her the truth, even if it meant risking everything. I'm Ryan Thorne, he said, the words heavy in the air between them. The founder of Skyfleet. But that's not who I want to be. I came here to find something real, and I found it with you. I didn't think I could keep pretending, but I was wrong. The lights in the library flickered. Moraine moved to them slowly. She turned on her flashlight and walked inside. Callie didn't speak right away. She stood still, her gaze fixed on him, processing his words. Ryan could feel the tension building, his palms sweating. Finally, Callie spoke, her voice quieter than he'd ever heard it. "Why didn't you tell me before?" I was scared," Ryan admitted. "Scared you wouldn't want me if you knew the truth. Scared that I would lose you." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Callie took a deep breath. "You should have trusted me." "Ryan, I know, and I'm sorry," he said, stepping closer, though not quite close enough to touch. "I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." She looked at him, her gaze softening, though there was still a trace of hesitation in her eyes. "You've already done enough. Now, it's up to me." Brian waited, his heart in his throat. Would she walk away from him? Would this be the end? But Callie's expression changed, just slightly, as she stepped back. "Come in," she said, her voice still guarded but not unkind. "Let's see where we go from here." The door clicked closed behind him, and Ryan felt, for the first time in days, like he might finally be standing on solid ground. Ryan followed Callie into the apartment, his mind still racing, unsure of what was happening. He hadn't expected her to let him in, not after everything, but as the door closed behind him, the silence between them was suffocating. End of chapter 12. Callie gestured for him to sit on the couch, though she didn't sit beside him. Instead, she leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, her expression a blend of suspicion and weariness. Ryan sat, his hands resting in his lap, unsure of where to begin. Callie broke the silence first, her voice steady but tinged with a hint of hurt. "You lied to me, Ryan. You told me you were just a guy trying to make ends meet, trying to be something real. But now I find out you're this billionaire tech mogul. You know, I wasn't even mad at first. I was just confused. I kept wondering why you couldn't trust me." Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, running a hand through his hair. "I should have told you. From the start. I know that now." Callie sighed, shaking her head. "You don't get it, do you? It's not just about the lie. It's about what you were hiding behind. You wanted to be a regular guy, but you've never been one, and that's fine. You could have had the courage to tell me that. I could have dealt with that, but you didn't even give me the chance. You were playing a part, just like everyone else does." Ryan's heart sank. He had wanted to show her that he was different. He had wanted to prove that he could be the kind of man who wasn't defined by his wealth or his title. But now, standing here in the silence of her apartment, he realized how much he had failed her. "I didn't want to hurt you," Ryan said softly. "I wanted something real, Callie. For once, I just wanted to be someone who mattered to you because of who I was, not because of what I could offer." Callie's gaze softened, but there was still a guarded look in her eyes. "And now that you've told me everything, what am I supposed to do with that? How do I even trust you again?" Ryan didn't have an answer. He had made a mess of everything, and now it seemed like there was no way out. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't have a solution. I just wanted you to know the truth. I'm sorry, Callie." She paused for a moment, considering his words. Then, slowly, she walked over to the couch and sat down beside him. Ryan tensed, not knowing what to expect, but instead of saying anything more, she just sat there, quietly. Ryan looked at her, his heart pounding. "What now?" Callie's eyes met his, her expression unreadable. "Now? Now we figure out what's real." Ryan couldn't help but smile at that. It was simple, but it was exactly what he needed to hear. The world he had built had crumbled around him, but maybe, just maybe, there was still something real here, something worth fighting for. "Okay. I don't know where this goes," Ryan said, his voice earnest, "but I want to find out." Callie nodded slowly, her expression still serious but not as cold as before. "I'm not promising anything, Ryan, but I'll give you a chance. A real chance. No more lies." Ryan's breath caught in his throat, relief flooding through him. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time in days, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could salvage something from the wreckage of his life. In an abandoned building, he found a little station. There was only one little toy, and, on the small little recliner, a little boy. "I won't let you down," he said quietly, meeting her gaze. Callie gave him a small smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "We'll see." Over the next few days, things between Ryan and Callie remained tentative. There were no grand declarations or sweeping gestures, just small steps, small moments of connection. Ryan spent more time with Callie and Noah, but he didn't push. He didn't try to rush things or force her to forgive him. He understood now that trust wasn't something that could be given lightly, and he had to prove himself worthy of it. It was a slow process, and Ryan found himself learning more than he ever had before. Callie was strong, not just in the way she handled herself, but in the way she navigated the complexities of her life. She balanced work, motherhood, and everything in between with a grace he had never seen before. She wasn't looking for a savior. She was more than capable of taking care of herself and Noah, but Ryan found himself wanting to be there for her, in whatever way she would allow. One afternoon, he picked Noah up from school, his heart skipping a beat as he saw the little boy run toward him with a grin. "Hey, Ryan," Noah called out, waving his arms excitedly. "Hey, buddy," Ryan said, bending down to ruffle Noah's hair. The boy's joy was infectious, and for a moment, Ryan allowed himself to forget the tension of the past few days. He was just a guy, a friend, picking up a child after school. There was no billionaire persona here, just Ryan. "I think?" Noah chatted happily about his day as they made their way back to the apartment. When they arrived, Callie was there, sitting on the couch with a book in hand. She looked up as they walked in, offering a small smile. It wasn't the kind of smile that meant everything was fixed, but it was a start. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," Ryan replied, nodding. "How's your day been?" "Busy, but good," Callie answered, setting the book down and standing up to greet Noah. She kissed the top of his head and then turned to Ryan. "Dinner's almost ready. You hungry?" Ryan hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the question. Was it really okay to sit down with her like everything was normal? He still wasn't sure where they stood, but he didn't want to complicate things further. "Yeah, I'm starving." As they sat down to dinner, Ryan felt a strange sense of normalcy settle over him. There was no rush, no pressure to fix everything at once. They ate together, and Noah talked about school and Callie made small talk with Ryan, though her tone was still cautious. But it was progress. Small, but real. And just like that, everything in their lives worked out fine. It was fine. It was fine. After dinner, Ryan offered to help clean up, something Callie didn't expect but seemed to appreciate. As he loaded the dishwasher, he felt a sudden wave of exhaustion wash over him. It wasn't physical, he wasn't tired from the day's work, but emotional. He had never realized how much effort it took to rebuild something that had been broken. And yet, as he looked at Callie and Noah, sitting on the couch together, he knew that it was worth it. When the dishes were done, Ryan joined them on the couch, keeping a respectful distance. He didn't want to push. But after a while, Callie leaned over, her shoulder brushing his, and for the first time in days, Ryan felt a sense of peace. It was too bad Callie had gone to the window when David was climbing all over him. "You're quiet tonight," Callie said, looking up at him. Ryan shrugged, his voice soft. Just thinking." "About what?" "About how much I've screwed up," he admitted, "and how much I want to fix it, but I can't do it by pretending anymore." Callie looked at him for a long moment, her gaze searching his face. "You don't have to do it all at once, Ryan. Just show up. That's all you can do." Ryan smiled, the weight in his chest easing a little. "I can do that." She smiled back, though it was still tinged with uncertainty. Good." As the evening wore on, Ryan couldn't help but feel the tension between them ease just a little bit more. It wasn't a fairy tale, not by a long shot, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Ryan felt like he had a chance to build something that wasn't about his wealth or his reputation. It was about who he was, who Callie was, and what they could become together. This month was going to be great for them, Ryan thought as he locked the door behind him. And maybe that was enough for now. Enjoyed this video? There's another incredible one right here. Subscribe now to make sure you're the first to see all our newest stories.